Rebecca is one of the great love stories of all time.
More like one of the great commentaries on what love isn't.
This is Take Two, a series brought to you by The Take,
where we compare two opposing sides to a cultural debate of our times.
Today's big question: is Rebecca a love story?
Take One will argue that no, Daphne du Maurier's classic story is really a critique of unhealthy relationships and how women are trapped by traditional marriage.
And Take Two will argue that yes, it is a complex and deep love story with a lot to teach us about how strong relationships don't take the obvious forms we might expect.
And I know that I have made the right decision to save the one thing worth walking through flames for. Love.
From here on out, there will be spoilers, so consider yourself warned. And now, here's Take One. Rebecca is a critique of unhealthy love. It's a commentary on gender roles that was way ahead of its time when the original novel was written and remains incisive today. The central love story in Rebecca is based on power imbalance, dishonesty, intense jealousy, and crime. The couple only truly come together in marital solidarity after Maxim de Winter reassures his new wife that he's not still hung up on his deceased first wife, Rebecca. Because in fact he killed Rebecca after she cheated on him repeatedly and told him she was pregnant with an illegitimate heir.
Because you loved her.
I hated her.
A romantic moment indeed. But the problematic undercurrents in the protagonist's relationship with Maxim are there long before this reveal. While many romantic stories spin an idea of love as a profound meeting of the minds and souls of equals, that is evidently not what Maxim is looking for in a woman. He's drawn to how unformed the protagonist is. He likes that she has no parents, no preconceptions, no life experience.
Everything I know is from books. I haven't really experienced anything yet.
The story emphasizes her underdeveloped state by not even telling us her name, and the way Maxim proposes underlines the fundamental inequality in their dynamic.
I'm asking you to marry me, you little fool.
When we later discover what Maxim's been hiding, his motivations in choosing such a green, anonymous bride seem sinister, as if he's purposely avoiding a partner who might challenge him or demand the respect of honesty and openness. Maxim also seems to choose the protagonist because his thinking is shaped by the damaging Madonna whore dichotomy. He's cast Rebecca in the stereotypical role of the evil harlot.
A parade of men, even her own cousin.
So he chooses his new wife largely because she appears the opposite of this. Later, though, the protagonist's loving commitment to the only man she's been with still doesn't stop Maxim from suspecting and policing her behavior.
Tell me how you dragged him down to the boathouse. Parade your fancy new night clothes for him.
From the protagonist's point of view, it's easy to see why she falls for this classically handsome guy who charms her with luxurious holiday excursions and whisks her away from a life of obscurity.
Have you ever heard of anything more romantic in your life? Home to Manderley. Oh my goodness, out of a fairy tale.
But she soon realizes the reality of everyday life with this stuffy aristocrat at the hierarchical Manderley is rigid and confining.
It's almost like being back on our honeymoon. Oh, I miss it, don't you?
That's not real life, darling.
And of course, there's the minor detail of Maxim being a wife killer who methodically covered up the evidence.
Her boat was damaged. I damaged it, deliberately.
Because the protagonist spends so much of the movie worrying that Maxim is still in love with Rebecca,
she was the love of his life.
Her reaction to learning about his crime is overwhelming relief.
All this time I thought you still loved Rebecca.
This is really all she cares about. Not that her husband murdered another woman, but who he loves more. The fact that she chooses to stand by him without a second thought, ultimately falling even more deeply in love as she becomes his co-conspirator, speaks to how completely her feelings of inadequacy, desperation to win over this man, and practical self-interest have combined to eclipse all sense of right and wrong. The story strongly resembles the 17th century fairy tale of Bluebeard about a new bride who discovers that her husband keeps a room containing the bodies of all his former murdered wives. In that story, the husband realizes his wife has found him out and threatens to behead her. And there's a key takeaway in Bluebeard's ending, that if someone has killed before, this is often not an aberration, but a reflection of their deeper character. While Maxim doesn't yet give any indication of wanting to hurt his second wife and actually encourages her to turn him in,
Go to the police. Just tell them everything.
we might wonder if hypothetically in the future the protagonist were to stray from her husband or somehow sully her Madonna-like virtue in his eyes. Would she really be safe from sharing Rebecca's fate?
And now for take 2. Rebecca is a story of true love. Just take director Ben Wheatley's word for it. He said, "I wanted to make something that had more love in it. Rebecca has dark elements, and it has a psychological, haunting story within it, but it's also about these two people in love. That was the main thing."
I haven't enjoyed myself like that for quite a long time.
Take 1 is being too cynical and buying into the same superficiality we witness in the movie's side characters, who fail to see the protagonist's deeper value. Throughout the film, we're continually reminded that the second Mrs. De Winter is viewed as not good enough for Maxim.
Do you honestly think he is in love with you?
You are nothing. You're worthless. Not worthy of him.
She internalizes the idea that she doesn't hold a candle to the radiant Rebecca.
Was Rebecca very beautiful?
I suppose she was the most beautiful creature I ever saw in my life.
But isn't love seeing someone differently than how everybody else does? Maxim's marriage to Rebecca taught him that surface-level qualities like glamour, class status, or knowing how to throw an elaborate party
She could wear anything with a figure like hers.
aren't what truly matter and don't necessarily lead to a happy marriage. Meanwhile, the protagonist's qualities are the foundation of a healthy relationship. She's unfailingly supportive. She's open to and curious about the world.
Well, I've always wanted to travel, so there's that.
She genuinely loves Maxim and wants to be monogamous. Most importantly, her presence makes him happy.
She was so good for Max. He's a changed man.
It's ironic that the protagonist spends so much time feeling guilty for failing to live up to the legacy of Rebecca, when really, it's the ways she differs from her predecessor that make her perfect for Maxim.
But you're very different people. And that's nothing to be ashamed of.
The story also illuminates what it takes to build a mature relationship.
Why didn't you tell me?
I was so afraid I'd have lost you.
When Maxim is keeping secrets from the protagonist early in their marriage, things are off between them.
All marriages have their secrets.
She's left guessing at what her husband is thinking,
How am I supposed to know anything if you don't tell me?
and his refusal to open up leads to several angry misunderstandings.
If I'd known it would upset you, Maxim.
But after Maxim reveals his deepest, darkest truth, something shifts. For the first time, they're in this together.
Nobody knows but us. Nobody will ever know.
The once naive and bumbling protagonist suddenly transforms into a savvy and clear-headed operator with a plan to keep her husband out of jail.
Don't be defensive. Answer their questions calmly. Say nothing. They can't prove anything.
She took out her boat and scuttled it. She drowned herself.
Take One may see this as a moral corruption, but it takes this total honesty to make the protagonist her husband's equal, confidant, and teammate, and for him to stop viewing her as a child.
It's gone forever. That funny, young, lost look I loved so much. You're not that person anymore.
Don't hate her for that.
So the story shows us, in a very literal way, that to have a strong union is to become your spouse's partner in crime. You have to trust the person you love with your full self and give them the chance to rise to the occasion for you, to reach a truly resilient level of love.
Back to take 1. Rebecca is innocent. One of the most important things that gets lost in Take 2's rose-colored view of this story is the experience of the title character. It's a perspective we don't get to hear firsthand, but let's look at the clues the story gives us about Rebecca. Most of what we hear about this woman's transgressions comes from Maxim, and can we really trust her killer's biased take on who she was? Everyone but Maxim seems to have adored Rebecca and misses her dearly, suggesting that she wasn't the one-dimensional villain he makes her out to be.
She was just one of those bloody annoying people who was irresistible to everybody. Men, women, children, animals.
We can imagine a very different version of this story as told by Rebecca. As a precedent for this, think of Wide Sargasso Sea, which explores the perspective of Bertha, the mad woman in the attic from Jane Eyre. In Jane Eyre, Bertha only matters insofar as she's an impediment to the romance between Jane and Rochester, and the story frames Rochester as the real victim.
I suffered all the agonies of a man bound to a wife at once, intemperate and unchaste.
Bertha's mental illness is used to make her seem dangerous and scary before, like Rebecca, she brings on her own death. But through a modern lens, both of these women seem more like victims of a society that didn't understand or accept them. Rebecca was full of daring,
She wasn't afraid of anything.
yet constrained to a life where her greatest purpose was to sit in a huge mansion, host parties, and produce a male heir. So, trapped in this marriage to a man she clearly didn't love or respect, Rebecca chose to live on her terms as much as she could.
And why shouldn't a woman amuse herself?
In effect, she lived with the freedom of a man.
He told me on our honeymoon how it would be, how she would keep her flat in London.
In the Daphne du Maurier novel that the movie is based on, Mrs. Danvers drives this point home when she says that Rebecca had all the courage and spirit of a boy. She ought to have been a boy. I often told her that. It's behaving this way while not being a boy that makes Rebecca transgressive at all.
She lived her life as she pleased, my Rebecca. No wonder a man had to kill her.
One of the story's big twists is that Rebecca wasn't actually pregnant, but had cancer of the reproductive system. And while on the surface this can be read as a harsh metaphor to signify that she was an unnatural or unfit woman, on closer inspection it really symbolizes that she's being destroyed internally by a world that's putting so much pressure on her to live up to a restrictive feminine purpose. It's also worth noting how du Maurier's own experiences with gender norms may have informed the story. In her youth, she created a male alter ego named Eric Avon, and in a letter she described herself as growing up with a boy's mind and a boy's heart and a boy's love of adventure. And then the boy realized he had to grow up and not be a boy any longer, so he turned into a girl, and not an unattractive one at that, and the boy was locked in a box forever. She had affairs with both men and women, was ambivalent about motherhood, and felt conflicted about being the breadwinner in her marriage. The author's complex feelings, which clearly made their way into Rebecca, reveal how the rigid gender binary can limit the expression of our true selves. In the same letter where du Maurier refers to locking her masculine self in a box, she continues in the third person. She opened the box sometimes and let the phantom, who was neither girl nor boy, but disembodied spirit, dance in the evening when there was no one to see. Her words almost seem to imply that Rebecca, the ghost who haunts this film, was a phantom du Maurier felt within herself, who only really becomes harmful because she's trapped inside these constraints. Essentially, Rebecca's world forced her to be the self-destructive person she became, by making her be one person for the public and another behind closed doors. This is why Rebecca's connection with Mrs. Danvers, who's often read as embodying a queer subtext, is such an essential and iconic aspect of the story.
He killed the only person I loved.
If this is truly a love story, consider that the fiercest expression of love and devotion we see is Danvers to Rebecca. This is the one person Rebecca felt she could be herself around. And Rebecca's real, unfiltered personality was the one bright spot in Danvers' unhappy life.
I'd brush her hair for her every evening.
Ultimately, the movie suggests that stuffy traditionalism, as embodied by the Manderley estate itself, must burn. Once it's turned to ashes, the protagonist is free to live a less constrained life abroad. But Rebecca herself never gets to escape. She's the fatal victim of this oppressive conservative system. When it comes down to it, what is the worst thing that Rebecca did that would even make her the villain she's presented as?
She said, imagine if I had a child, Max. You could never prove it wasn't yours. See, it wasn't enough for her to take my pride.
It's pretty clear to a modern audience that cheating on your husband or failing to protect his family name does not give him the right to kill you.
Take 2. Rebecca is the villain. Take 1's argument that Rebecca didn't deserve to die overlooks the fact that she wanted to.
She wouldn't have wanted to suffer.
After learning that she only had weeks to live because of her advanced cancer,
by me it was clear she was too far gone for treatment.
She used Maxim to indirectly commit suicide.
And she said, go on, Max. Do it.
Knowing full well that the act would torture him privately and land him in very hot water publicly once it was discovered. This elaborate manipulation gives Rebecca an almost supernatural power, as if she's a demon who's still present and getting revenge on her husband from beyond the grave.
I can't let you have Manderley. It was ours, you see.
Ultimately, the problem with Rebecca is that she's all surface with no real substance. She seems perfect and exciting, but on the inside is rotten, devious, and takes a perverse pleasure in fooling everyone around her.
She relished it, playing the part, the perfect wife.
Rebecca's character is a reflection of the morally bankrupt, classist society our story takes place in. The protagonist is made to feel inferior because she's lower class.
Never even seen a house like this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you'd been a lady's maid.
Whereas Rebecca is adored by this world because of her good breeding and all the fancy trappings of being upper class. But her personality results in a hollow, terribly unhappy private life, because Rebecca is missing all those valuable inner gifts the protagonist embodies, like kindness and not thinking she's better than anyone else. Interestingly, Carrie Fry refers to Gone Girl as another sort of Rebecca. Like Rebecca, Gone Girl's Amy pretends to be the perfect wife, the cool girl, but there's a sociopathic anger brewing underneath that leads her to frame her husband for a crime against her.
And if I get everything right, the world will hate Nick.
This likeness to the malicious yet intriguing Amy illuminates that Rebecca clearly is a villain, albeit a very complex and charismatic one. Take One argued that Maxim's complaints about Rebecca are biased, but so is everything we hear in her favor. Most of the praise for Rebecca comes from Mrs. Danvers.
This wasn't a job for me. Rebecca was my life.
Yet even this person who worshipped Rebecca didn't get much in return. Rebecca keeps her diagnosis secret even from Danvers, manipulating this faithful servant like she does everyone else with superficial lies, and making us wonder what else the housekeeper didn't know about Rebecca's true self.
It must have hurt, knowing your only friend in the world took a secret like that to her grave.
Rebecca even used Danvers' name to keep her own identity private during her surreptitious doctor visits.
Rebecca Danvers, yes, now remember.
A detail which subtly reveals that she viewed her servant without respect as a tool for her use. But the most significant expression of Rebecca's villainy is what she symbolizes in the central love story, as an invisible interloper in Maxim and the protagonist's marriage. This is ultimately a story about jealousy, which boils down to the truth that you can't have a positive relationship if the specter of your partner's ex is always interfering. Just as they need to escape the oppressive constraints of society's past traditions as embodied by Manderley, they need to stop viewing their marriage in relation to Maxim's past one.
You'll never replace her. You can't replace her.
And create something original that's just theirs.
So, where do you stand on the Rebecca question?
Will you remember the movie as a romantic fairy tale or a deeply unsettling nightmare?
Tell us whether Take One or Take Two has you convinced.
And be sure to subscribe to Netflix Film Club.